Hi everyone, I'm Tim and welcome to the UK Festival podcast. Now, we have a bit of an interesting one today. Before now, we've either been talking to people who I know quite well or who I at least have known about quite a lot. So today that kind of changes. I'm talking to Diccon Towns, CEO of Also Festival, a cool sounding 3-day event in, I think, Warwickshire, which that I know essentially nothing about. So today we're going to be diving into a whole new world together. So I guess first of all, Dickon, introduce Also. Tell us what it is and what you've got planned.
Yeah, hi Tim, and thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Right, also is a kind of unique festival. I'm sure a lot of festivals say that, but we're a mixture of ideas, talks, comedy, and music, as well as kind of workshops and nature walks, and all topped off with a disco bunker for the evening. So yeah, we try and kind of stitch together quite an eclectic weekend for people to enjoy, not specifically focused on one particular aspect of the festival.
Mm. So where are you actually based? Because I said I think Warwickshire, but I want to get that
Yeah.
down.
We are, yes, we're Warwickshire, just between Stratford-on-Avon and Leamington, if you know the area, about 40 miles south of Birmingham, if you're less familiar.
What's your site like?
And it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, that's one of the key attractions to it. So initially the site belonged to part of a stately home. It was designed by Capability Brown.
Ah,
And then in the 60s, the whole place fell into disrepair and it was split up and sold off. So the site is effectively half of what was that estate. It's got a lake in it. It's got all these amazing, 200-year oak trees
oh,
the grounds.
nice.
It is stunningly beautiful. Um, yes, so there's a lot to be enjoyed from just being there before you even get to the entertainment.
Yeah, so do you do a lot to decorate it or do you just let it speak for itself?
Well, we do. Yeah, I think one of the joys of doing a UK festival is, the Great Britain and England, perhaps in particular, in that time of year, that kind of like May to July time, the countryside is so beautiful.
Mm,
You've got all that amazing green everywhere. And I think, but it really takes well to having stuff placed on top of it, some
mm.
color and some construction and some life that kind of really brings it together. So yeah, we do. What do we do? Well, this year we've got our kind of heavenly bodies theme.
Oh,
So we're
yeah.
actually building an orrery across our whole site.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
So
So
we've
you're
got
having planets everywhere and
we are, yes. The scale may be a little bit off in some situations, but effectively, yeah, we're building a sun at the center of the site, and then we're going to have, Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Jupiter. Jupiter's problematic because it's absolutely huge. So that's going over
yeah.
the other side of the
I mean,
lake.
I guess the fun thing to do could be to make Jupiter into like a dance tent.
That would be good. That would be good. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think for it to work in the sort of the radii emanating out from the sun, it kind of has to go across the other side of the lake.
Uh,
And it's not going to be spherical, it's just going to be circular, but the rest of the planets will be spherical.
Spherical. Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible. That
yeah,
that's a very high effort. I saw a giant moon at WOMAD last year. Like,
yeah.
were you anything to do
How
with
had they
that?
made that?
I think it was inflated, but I'm not sure.
And could you go inside it?
No, unfortunately not. It was just hanging from
Yeah.
hanging from the trees. It was like
Okay.
suspended by cables, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really cool construction though.
Excellent. Yeah. We did something a little bit similar a few years ago. Really clever idea by our lighting guy. We just got a big, giant, big, I think it was one of those weather balloons, blew it up,
Mm.
and then from underneath just projected the moon's surface on it.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
genius.
it looked like a giant moon. I mean, really convincing, actually.
Yeah.
Really, really
Yeah, no,
cool.
when it's up in the sky, you can't really tell the difference because the moon looks flat from the Earth. So,
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think you're so sort of your brain is so used to parsing those craters and everything that you just kind of read it the same.
anyway, back to
Yeah.
your festival. You describe it as a festival of ideas. You're still not muted. Jesus. Sorry, I'll edit that out. Disrespect to your interviewee.
Yeah, that's all right.
I made a consistent effort to do so. I muted the bit I didn't want to mute and unmuted the bit I did want to mute. Yeah. But anyway, so you describe your festival as a festival of ideas. How does that affect like your decisions on what to put on?
Yeah, it's a good question. So because I mean, the spine of our content really is talk. So we get kind of academics, writers, and we'll probably come on later to how we kind of augment that. But really, that's the kind of key to the festival. It is the sort of intellectual content that we have in the day. And we do really try and then emanate that out through what we do in the rest of the festival. So, we'll have really the ideas will kind of flow through everything we do, through the kind of food events, through the workshops. In terms of comedy, we'll try and get comedy that kind of supplements the theme. And I suppose, that the nature of doing that is that you have got a very interested crowd coming. They're there for the ideas primarily, and so they're keen to learn, they're keen to get involved, which I guess really informs the structure of the festival as well, because we have grown over the years to really provide a lot for people to actually do, as well as just kind of sit around enjoying.
So, what are the topics for some of the talks you've got on?
Okay, well, as I said, we've got heavenly bodies as our theme, which cuts a couple of ways, but we've got astrophysicist Lise Koltenegger, who's going to be talking about potential for alien life. I mean,
That's so cool.
I've heard it said that if you talk to a physicist, they will say, yeah, there are definitely aliens out there, because there's so many billions of stars and across all the universe and galaxies, that the probabilities are that there will be alien life on one of them. But if you talk to a biologist, they say, no way, mate. There's just the kind of requirements for life are so kind of specific that the possibility of finding it elsewhere just wouldn't happen. So anyway, we'll be exploring that with the physicist. So we'll see what she's got to say. We've got Tim Marshall. Have you read his book on called Prisoners of Geography? Came out a few years ago.
I haven't read it, but I understand the outline. It's broadly
Yeah.
on how geography affects societal development, right?
Yeah, and geopolitics, and how it's really interesting actually, especially I mean, it was written obviously before the Ukraine war, and I only read it fairly recently, and he talks a lot about Russia and how the geography of Russia sort of requires them to have that buffer zone that is Ukraine between them and Europe, and historically that's always been the case. And it just gives a bit more context, I think, into a lot of the situations that are going on now, and really help you understand. Anyway, that's not what he's talking about also this year.
Oh, what's this talk about?
His new book is about the geography of space and how that is being divided up politically.
Oh, so like low Earth orbit, geostationary,
Yeah,
moon.
all that, the moon, exactly. So that's quite interesting. So looking at kind of space from a political perspective, which I don't think is one that's often covered.
No, it's so
And then
interesting as well.
yes,
Like,
yeah,
I mean, I've mostly only come at it from reading the Expanse books, but it's still really fun to think, well, terrifying as well to think about, like the idea of extra national bodies controlling like parts of space or stations, or you know.
It really is. And obviously, we've got precedent with something like Antarctica, where,
Mm,
we have this notion that an area can belong to no one and sort of be for the common good, which I believe is how space has operated up till now.
mm.
But, is that going to carry on? I guess that is the subject of Tim's book, and we'll find out. Um, and then we've got other stuff. We've got Natalie Haynes. I don't know if you know her. She is a
A
writer on Greek myth.
classicist, isn't she?
Classicist,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
I
we've got
studied
her.
ancient history at uni,
Oh, do
so
you?
yeah, I've come across her show.
Yeah,
I'm on
yeah.
Radio 4, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Mm.
she's rewritten a lot of the classics from a female perspective, which is really interesting. And so we've got her, we've got psychology, we've got Philippa Perry talking, we've got Catherine Loveday, who is a psychologist at Westminster, who does a lovely piece where she just gets different psychologists that she works with and does a little panel and gets them to talk about the work that they're doing. So yeah, a few of the things, loads more as well.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. You could go and have your mind completely opened. Like,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we want to try and do is, yeah, because there is an appetite for learning stuff, obviously,
mm,
and obviously you've got the internet. The internet is great. It's quite an active thing. You have to know what you're looking for, really.
you
And
have
I
to be
think what
able
we,
to tell the rubbish from the good stuff as well, and a
yeah,
lot of people
well,
can't. Whereas with a curated thing like a festival, you've got the ability to, only deliver speakers who actually know what they're talking about.
yes, that's exactly right. And Um, I think yes, and you can take it or leave it. You're there at the
Mm.
festival, you can listen to one thing, you don't even have to agree. You might have different opinions on some of the stuff, but it's there. All the people we have are experts in their field. We don't just that's really important, I think, for
Mm.
all the reasons you've just mentioned. Um, so I can't remember where I was going with that, but yes, that is yeah, an important part of it.
So does this mean the music lineup is a bit more arty and interesting than your usual festival?
Yeah, I mean, because we're not primarily a music festival, so I
Mm.
think one of the concepts of also is we wanted to take, a traditional literary festival, but
Yeah.
actually give it the form of a music festival.
Mm.
So it's in a field, there is, and it kind of splits almost, not entirely, but sort of by day, by night. So we've got kind of talks
Okay.
in the day and then music and stuff at night. It doesn't quite work that way, but that's kind of the idea. And so with the music, because it's not the primary focus, what we try and do is kind of weave a journey for people throughout the whole weekend. So it's an eclectic
Mm.
lineup, and we start on Friday night with a kind of quite electronic vibe to the whole thing. So and that's all in the woods. We've got a kind of dance floor in the
Oh,
woods.
yes, dances in the woods. That's the way to
Yes.
go. Dance music is
So
like 10 times better in woods. Always.
I think that's true. I think that's true. Especially one of the best things ever are lasers in woodland. When you've got lasers
Yes.
playing off all the leaves in the woods, it just looks incredible. So uh, yes, we try and take people on a bit of a journey. So we kind of Friday night's all about the electronica, and then Saturday day it's more sort of we have kind of like acoustic stuff and jazz stuff in the
Very good.
day, and then we build up to our headliners for Saturday night. So we've got Stornoway,
Ooh,
them.
they're folk, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of like indie folk band from Oxfordshire. Really lovely. They got a new album out last year.
Yeah, I think I heard
And
them on
then
the Folk Chart album show.
yeah, yeah. And then after them, we've got this fabulous Brazilian sort of funk jazz outfit
Oh,
for to close up Saturday
what are
night
they?
on
What
the
are they
main
called? Sorry,
stage.
the funk
The
jazz outfit,
Fontanas,
the
Fontanas,
Fontanas. Oh,
yeah,
I think I might have
yeah.
heard
So
of
they'll
that.
be a lot of fun. So
Mm.
it is it's giving people that journey through the weekend. So it's not just like one band after the other after the other. You know, there is a kind of
Mm.
a rhyme and reason to it.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Like, it's more curated. It's kind of that seems to be what I'm picking up on the festival as a whole. You've got a very artistic approach to like making sure people have a good time.
Yes, and that's yeah. We really try and do, and we aware that there are different types of audience as well. So it's
Mm.
not just a single route through the weekend. There are a few different routes depending on what kind of weekend you're after. I mean, some of our audience will probably be there mainly for the talks and then slope off back to their tents in the evening. Others, we've got some people who've probably never been to a talk also, and are all just about the nighttime. But we do try and curate a number of different paths through the festival, aware that there are these different audiences.
So, how
Definitely.
late does your music go?
So, well, we've got a 11 o'clock curfew on across the site, which is annoying because I sort of feel like with any festival you want to go later.
Yeah, no, I've
We,
had to work with it a few times. It's been a absolute nightmare.
yeah. However, what we've done, well, actually this year is the return of our disco bunker. So
Ah.
to get around this problem, we've got a local farmer who brings a couple of trailers worth of those big 8 foot straw bales, and he actually builds a house for us out of these huge straw bales, which we then put a roof on, and that is a pretty soundproof structure. And that then we can go on all night with that. So
Oh,
that's
that's
our kind of
brilliant.
yeah, yeah. And the
How
site is
much
big enough.
how
Sorry,
much
go on.
does he charge for that, or how much would it cost to put it together? Do you mind saying?
I think to be honest, so this is the first year we've done this since pre-COVID.
Mm,
Because with COVID, obviously we couldn't do anything like that.
yeah.
We did go ahead in COVID, but we'll maybe come to that in a bit. Um, and since then, with a couple of years after, we haven't done it, but this year felt like a good year to bring it back.
Mm.
So prior to COVID, I think it cost about 500 quid for him to bring the
Mm.
bales on. I mean, he takes them away, he comes and picks them up. And so basically you're paying for his time to come and build the
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
The straw goes back to him at the end of the festival.
So can you get quite a
Um,
beefy sound system in there?
yeah, you can, and it's incredible. When you go in there, you can't hear anything from outside. It's like because these things, it's like 4 foot walls
Mm,
of
mm.
straw. It's just the best sound deadening material you can imagine. So that's really good. We do, I mean, then we do keep entertainment going later than 11. So even
Mm.
though we may have to have a sort of curfew, and what that means in practice is that there can really be nothing audible at the perimeter of the site. So
So,
we can still have a bit of acoustic music. We tend to have a bit of brass, uh, brass folk band action in the dining tent that goes on till midnight. We still have talks, we have comedy, that all goes on a bit later. But for our main stage, our big stages, yeah, we have to close those at 11.
it sounds like you've done a really good job of getting around that curfew, though, with the disco bunker and with doing brass acoustic in your dining stage.
Yeah, it's a nice solution. Especially as I think, people are some people are winding down then. So the acoustic stuff works well if they're, you know, heading towards their tent, but just want a bit more. Obviously, the disco bunker's there for people who just want to stay up all night. That's fine. Um, I mean, prior in the intervening years, we've experimented with silent disco headphones. That
Mm.
that worked well, and in the woods we had our kind of DJs in the woods till 2, 3 in the morning, just on silent disco headphones. And in fact, what we did for that is we made a sort of hiring the headphones, which we did pretty cheap. I think it was only like 5 or 10 quid a
Mm.
set to hire for the weekend. So we got people to hire them for the weekend. And
Mm.
then we had a number of different things across the weekend where you could use them. There's like a late night cinema. There was obviously the
Mm.
disco in the woods. And then we had like because you got 3 channels on the headphones,
Yeah.
so you could switch between whatever it is you wanted to
I
engage
always
with.
find that really funny in silent discos because you've got like three different crowds dancing in three different ways to three different sets of music.
That is bizarre. Yeah, I must admit we didn't do that I've been to, I know what you mean. I've been to places where they've done that, and it's kind of weird because, as you say, people choose their own channel, and
Mm.
then you got half the room doing one thing and the other half doing the other. And I think it's much better just to have everybody on the same channel in that
Mm.
space
Yeah.
because then everybody's kind of in it together and that kind of
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. It emulates a proper like club or dance floor space.
Yeah, yeah, we actually persuaded, the DJ Justin Robertson. I don't know if you
Oh,
know him
no, I
anyway.
don't know if I do, but what does he
Um,
do? What sort of music?
he does sort of like house music. He's a very sort of eclectic DJ. He's
Oh.
originally like big Manchester DJ back
Mm.
in the day.
Mm.
And I think we persuaded him to do his first silent disco, and he's like, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because you're just up against somebody else, and people are like, no, we're not going to do that. We will just be you in the woods. And he
Mhm.
absolutely loved it because it works really well.
Mm.
But I don't think you can beat having everybody in a confined space with a massive bass bin at the end of the day.
Nah.
So
So the
there
bunker
you
it
go.
is.
So Bunker is back, exactly.
Oh, that's really exciting. So that leads me on to the next question. What's the crowd normally like at Also? It sounds like it's probably quite mixed.
It is. It's I mean, predominantly I would say 35 to 50. So,
Mm.
as festivals go, it's kind of a little bit older, a little bit
Mm.
more middle-aged. Having said that, um, we picked up a younger cohort in COVID that have stuck with us, and we do have, our sort of, I would say like, yeah, mid to late 20s crowd is growing all the time.
Hmm.
And we do have a lot of older people coming, especially on day tickets because they just want to come for the talks or something. So it is properly multi-generational, which ties into what I was saying about trying to curate different
Mm.
paths through the weekend because it's difficult with all these things. You don't want to be all things to all people because then you end up being nothing. You've got to have your identity. Um,
Mm.
Having said that, I think if you're clever about it, you can find different things for different people to do. And we've got a number of different stages. I think we've got something like 13 different stages. Some of them are like literally a space in the woods, but something will be happening on those stages. And even if it's like, 15 people sitting doing bushcraft in the woods, that's that's great for them. That's what they want to do. While somebody else will be listening to a DJ down at the Rum Shack. So yeah,
So
it's they are a mixed crowd, but I guess predominantly that kind of 35 to 50 crowd.
late in the evening, do you have many like musicians and bands just dotted about in the woods and around the site?
Yeah, so Woods is yeah, Friday night would be electronica. Saturday night in the woods is more comedy than music. We've got a lake stage, which is our kind of acoustic stage.
Okay.
That will go on to probably 10 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Hmm.
We've got a rum shack, and that's a sort of beach bar vibe down by the lake.
Hmm.
That will have DJs on it sort of all day till about 11, well, till the curfew kicks in.
Yeah.
Main stage will be talks during the day and then bands on in the evening. Um, we also do a talent show, so we've got our own talent show on like early Saturday night. It's the switch between the talks bit and the music on the main stage on Saturday night, which that's just great fun.
Does it tend
Just
to
get
be more
everybody.
tongue in cheek or a bit more
Yeah,
like
no, no,
genuinely?
absolutely. Well, no, it actually is. It's an interesting variety. So we've got kids talent show, adults talent show. Adults tends to be a little bit more ironic. Kids
Mm.
tends to be a little bit more. It's cute though.
Yeah. So, you've got a lot of comedy on. A lot of the
Yes.
time, festival comedy has a bit of a bad reputation because comics are trying out new stuff. Audiences tend to be a bit disengaged. Is that something that happens at also, something you worry about, or is it not so much a problem for you?
That's really interesting. Have you experienced that yourself, or is that some
To
more
be honest,
reputation?
right, I'm
Yeah,
the disengaged audience, so I wouldn't have
interesting.
noticed it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have
yeah,
even noticed it. Whenever I'm at a comedy at a festival, I'm paying so little attention because I'm sitting
yeah,
there because it's shady. Like,
yes.
um,
Okay, so I think the probably the only other like music type festival I've been to with comedy, or where I've noticed the comedy too, has been Latitude, and they normally have pretty good comics there, so I think the audience is quite engaged.
no,
Um,
I saw it at like Reading and Download where they've got
right,
comics,
okay,
but people are 7 beers in, and comedy when
yeah,
you're 7 beers in
yeah,
is sort
yeah.
of a waste of time. Everything's funny at
Yes,
that point.
absolutely. Yes, I mean that's probably a slightly different demographic to our crowd as well. I mean, so with our comics, yeah, it's a mixture of kind of touring shows and people previewing Edinburgh material. I
Ah,
kind of like that. I like the fact that we're seeing works in progress. You know, because these are good comedians, right?
mm,
Last year we had Ahir Shah he did also, and then took his show to Edinburgh and won best comedy show at Edinburgh. So to have seen that in its
infancy.
infancy, I mean, well, that's probably overstating. I think he had been working on that show a long time, but it was going where it was going. It's fantastic. Equally, this year we've got somebody like Sara Pascoe, and I know she's got a show that she's been touring this year, so that is going to be really polished. So,
Do you think
and
is
again,
she bringing her main tour to the festival?
she's bringing her main show. Yes, yeah,
Ooh,
yeah. So
that's
that's very
exciting.
exciting. Yeah. Um, so, and again, we put that in the woods, so it's quite an intimate arena, and it's far away from the main stage. So you're not getting people just kind of straggling past. I think people have gone to that part of the festival site because they want to see the comedy, so they are quite engaged. And
Yeah,
I think,
I
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say I could really see Sarah Pascoe really benefiting from an intimate venue where
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. And I feel like our comedy is just getting better and better. It's such a good fit for us. Because I think back to the ideas thing, I think a lot of comedy these days is so clever, and it's especially when you start blending spoken word and comedy and
mm.
poetry and comedy. It's yeah, it works really well.
So how did the festival first come about and how did you first get involved?
So well, initially, my wife Helen, who till very recently was also part of the festival, and a friend of hers set up this night in London called Salon London, and that it was designed around the same ideas really, which was getting experts in front of an audience that otherwise wouldn't have access to those people. Um, and that ran for, I think we started that in 2008. I was drafted in quite quickly to do things like, put speakers up and make PowerPoint presentations work and that kind of thing. So that's how my involvement started. Um, and that ran for 2008, so that would have been about 6 years. Um, and it was absolutely fantastic. Three speakers a night, all around a theme. Very different speakers we'd put together, so we try and look at a single theme from different standpoints, but all experts in their field. And I think we got to a point where we just felt this isn't enough time to really go into these ideas, and you get to the end of the night and we just felt we wanted to extend the whole thing over a weekend, which is where it also started. It was the idea of bringing these experts together with an audience who was interested but not necessarily academic, and getting them together with ideas for the weekend. And I think I maybe said earlier, we really wanted to bring that music festival feeling and vibe to that kind of literary festival content.
So, why have you gone for your theme that you have this year?
The heavenly bodies.
The heavenly bodies, yes. I was going to say the
Yeah,
celestial orrery. Sorry.
it's part of it. Because we've never done it before. We've never done space before. And heavenly bodies as a theme cuts a couple of ways, because obviously you've got heavenly bodies, as in the celestial bodies. Quite a lot of what we do is around food and health. So we're thinking about our own bodies at the same time. So yeah, it just seemed like a good time to do this theme. I think we've done a number of different themes in the past. We've done travel, we've done chance, we've done speed, motion, and that kind of thing. So we've done some quite sort of esoteric themes. And this is a chance to look at our sort of position in the universe, I suppose. If that doesn't sound a bit too pretentious.
No. So you've got a lot of people coming at it from like a scientific perspective. Do you have many people coming at it from a spiritual perspective?
Yes, we do. I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we don't. There's always this idea that there's this real dichotomy between scientific and spiritual, which in some ways there is. But I think there is a spiritual side to our relationship to the celestial bodies. It's part of our history. It's part of our, historically, it was a huge part of our culture. Going back, it's part of a lot of the structures in this country are all built around this idea. So I think we definitely wanted to acknowledge that side of things too. So we have got like an astrology session, which you could argue sits very ill at ease next to some of the science. But I think it's important to not necessarily that you have to believe in astrology, but you can acknowledge the fact that it is part of a belief system that at one point was scientific. It was how people tried to make sense of the universe and the stars and their place in that. So, and obviously there are other forms of spirituality. I think just being in nature is a form of spirituality, and it's something we really lean into with our site. We do moonwalks, we do kind of dawn yoga stuff. We've got swimming in the lake, so you can do like a dusk swim or a dawn swim.
So all of that sounds quite weather dependent.
If you've been to a British festival, I mean, yeah, possibly, but the Brits are good at dealing with this sort of thing. We had terrible weather last year. So last year we had a yellow weather warning for wind.
For rain?
And
wind,
for wind primarily, but it came with a lot of rain as well. So much so that we had to close down the main stage for a couple of hours on Saturday afternoon because it was just too windy. And we thought, oh God, this is awful. People are going to be going home in their droves. Not a bit of it. They were just, raincoats on, out on it. And with the swimming in the rain is one of the best thing ever. Just the water feels warmer for some reason. So no, that thankfully doesn't deter our audience, although you think it perhaps should.
Oh, no, that kind of makes sense actually. I've actually found it's younger, less culturally aware audiences who also tend to be put off more by the rain. People who are
Mm.
more into whatever they're into tend to stay out for more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And when we went ahead in COVID, and the weather then was appalling. It was because we
Mm,
had to do it late because of, well, that's the
everything.
only time we could do it. So it was August bank holiday, and there was a north wind. It was raining. It was freezing, and but people just got stuck in. They absolutely loved it. Probably because they were starved of any
Yeah, first
entertainment. But
festival in 2 years, two and
yeah,
a half.
well, yeah, yeah.
So where did the so you said about the nights in London, they were where the ideas behind also originally came from. How did that jump over into being a festival? You said you needed more size for it, but what was the thing that made you think you could do it?
Well, access to the land firstly. So we had access to the place where we put the festival on. And really it wasn't a question of size so much as time. It's spending more time with these ideas that we wanted to do. And so yes, it was that first prompted us. And yeah, the combination of the two just seemed like a really natural fit, I
Have
guess.
you stayed on the
Uh,
same site consistently since you started?
we have, yeah, yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah, which is nice. I mean, as I said earlier, it is absolutely beautiful. We're very lucky to be here.
So when was your first edition and how did it go?
It was 2014.
Hmm.
Um, I think probably in common with a lot of festivals when they start off is basically I think maybe four of us, four no, the five of us started it up together, and it was basically everybody we knew
Hmm.
got kind of strong armed into coming along. So it was tiny. I think we sold 225 tickets. We had four tents. It's incredible what you learn doing these things. But
Hmm.
we obviously had no idea. I was a software developer. We've been running events in London, but running an event in a room somewhere is very different to doing stuff in a field. I had no
Hmm.
real idea what we were doing. Um, but it was we were blessed with the weather. It's gorgeous weather, and we knew enough. We obviously had great contacts in terms of speakers, so we got some really good speakers along.
Hmm.
We had some good contacts in the music industry, so we got some, a couple of good acts to come along. We got some good DJs, and it worked. We had the Disco Bunker that first year as well, which was fun. I managed to fall through the roof, which was less fun. Um, but apart from that, it was sort of chaotic, but it happened. People loved it, and it was enough to make us to want to do it again.
Did you have
Which
anyone on the team at all who really knew how to put on outdoor events?
no,
Oh God.
no, no, not at all. I mean, we'd worked at a few festivals, so we'd taken the Salon London idea around out to other festivals by that point. So we'd done Latitude and Wilderness and Stand and Calling, and Festival Number Six, I think, was
Hmm.
running then. So we'd seen the workings of a festival, I guess, from not exactly from the inside, but sort of almost on the inside. Um, but no, we had no idea really, which I think is probably if you knew, you probably wouldn't do it.
That's
Like
what
try hard.
everyone who's got to this point says. Like I don't think any festival organizer says like if they knew what everything they knew now, they would do it fine going in. It's the ignorance that makes it possible.
I think that's absolutely right. It is absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
So I take it also has changed quite a lot from that 200 odd person event with four tents in a field.
Yes, yeah. I think the four tents we had initially were those clear span tents. All the talks were indoors.
Mm.
We've kind of moved the whole site around. It's unrecognizable really from what it was. COVID year was interesting because prior to that, we did everything inside a tent, so all our bands and talks were inside. That forced us to have an outdoor stage, which we've kept ever since, and I think is much nicer. Um, so yeah, it's just grown and grown and grown. And we, in terms of what we build each build year, we try and add something else to the site. So we recycle a lot of what we do. We reuse, pretty much everything year on year, but we're always adding to it, which is really fun.
That's really good. So, how big has the festival got now?
So I think we normally have about 2,000 people on site,
Oh,
including,
nice.
artists and people working and volunteers and things.
I
So
find
which is
that's
a
just
really,
perfect.
sorry.
I
Yeah,
find
it's
it's
a
just the
it's a
perfect
lovely
number
size. Yeah,
because you can get
it's a
to know
lovely size.
everyone by the end of the whole event, and like you know every face in the crowd, and it's you just get this sense of affection you don't at bigger events.
I think that's definitely true. That's definitely true. And there people know each other. People meet at the festival, and people have become friends at also coming year on year. I think you're absolutely right. It's a good number to feel at home. I think what the sweet spot is you want to feel like you're going to meet some new people and
Hmm.
feel like you'll bump into some people and it's a good size for that. I also think it's like a weird thing that happens with the economies of a festival as you grow. You get to a certain size, which is maybe about sort of 5,000 to 8,000, where really you suddenly have to spend a load more on infrastructure. You
Hmm.
suddenly need a lot of fencing. Your PA costs are going to go up. And I think that really cripples a lot of festivals because their costs go up, but your ticket sales, to absorb that, you then need to try and kind of almost double your ticket sales to pay for all that extra cost. Whereas a
Yeah,
smaller thing is sort of, sorry, go on.
I've seen festivals of similar size. So like in terms of things going on, but like
Mm,
one is twice the size of the other in terms of attendance. And it just seems
yes,
like all of the extra money from all the tickets has been spent on infrastructure.
yeah,
And the infrastructure
yeah,
was really good compared to terrible infrastructure, but still, that's
yeah. No, nobody has a better weekend because you've got more Harris fencing around the place. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like that doesn't make anybody's weekend better, but at a certain size, you need to spend that money.
Mm.
So yeah, it's difficult, and I do think there is a sweet spot. I mean, also it's never going to get. I'd like to take it to maybe 2,500, 3,000, something like that, but it wouldn't work any bigger than that. I don't think it's just not that vibe.
No, it's good that you've got like a solid idea of what you want it to be rather than just trying to grow for growth's sake.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard, and I think it works the other way as well. We used to work at. Did you ever go to Festival Number Six up in Port Merion?
Unfortunately, not.
No, it's an absolutely lovely festival, and I think for them, they had a couple of years of terrible weather, and I think they were about sort of 15,000, maybe a bit more actually.
Oh,
But
yeah,
as their
it's quite
numbers
big.
started to come down, and they still had these huge costs for putting on this festival, and it just killed them in the end, I think. So yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, if you build a party for 15,000 people and only like 10,000 people come, then your
Yeah,
costs are just going to murder you. In a couple of years
yeah,
of losses in a row, something's going to break.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
unfortunately seems to be happening across the whole industry at the moment, unless people like suddenly buy a whole load of tickets that like yeah, but even then, even if people buy tickets for the events, because no one's pre-ordered, a lot of places are really, really struggling. I imagine, I take it you're struggling like everyone else when it comes to pre-order
yeah.
tickets.
It's just yeah, it's brutal out there. And we are we're fortunate in a number of ways that we have um, a great volunteer program. I think that we've got the economies of scale that I've just talked about. I think our size helps us in that our costs aren't huge in
Mm.
festival terms. So when you're staring at a loss, it's not like you know, a ruinous loss. It's a kind of vaguely manageable loss
Yeah,
because of
it's
our
not a,
size,
oh, I
because we're
could buy a
small.
house for this loss.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not that bad. And we've got a amazing volunteer program, which
So are you
just
still open for volunteers?
we oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh.
So we our volunteer the way we run volunteers, so we do a lot, we run build weekends throughout
Mm.
the year, because we've actually got a unit on the farm where we put the festival on. So we can build stuff in the unit in like weekends in March, April, May, June. So we run these volunteers week. We just finished one, just had one this weekend gone where we had 22 people on site building stuff. Um, and that works really well because, for them, they really seem to enjoy it. They come along and, get power tools out and chop bits of wood up and make crazy stuff. And secondly, obviously, they get a free ticket for the festival, which is good for them, and we get that work done, which is good for us. It saves us money, so that's a real win-win. But no, fundamentally, I thought last year was tough. I think, well, to be honest, since COVID, it's been just horrible, really.
Mm.
Um, as I said, we were one of the very few festivals to go ahead in 2020.
You went ahead
We
in 2020. I thought you were talking
we
about
did.
2021. Oh.
No, no, no. 2020. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, why?
Yes.
How?
Yeah, that is a
Why?
good question. That's a good question. Um,
Mm.
how? Uh, how? Because there was a window basically that August bank holiday. It was looking possible that we could go ahead. So we engaged with our local council. They said, yeah, okay, we're not saying no. So we put together an event plan, and effectively we kind of like made it tiny. It went back down to 500 people,
Mm.
everything outdoors. Um, you know, Ostensibly everybody was supposed to be in their bubbles, distanced 2 meters from anybody else at the
Was that
festival. It was
about,
quite
was
weird.
that following those rules at, like at a pub, you know? But
Yeah,
they
exactly.
did they
Yes. Yeah, I
apply
think
like at a pub though? So not.
there was definitely some breaching of the rules at some point. I do remember having to go around, vainly
Trying
trying to
to,
separating people, and it was
yeah.
with mixed results, I must say.
No, as a waiter during that period, bubble separation was my least
Yeah.
favorite job.
You feel like such a killjoy, but you have to try. And so,
Yeah,
but
you
the
don't have to
council were
succeed.
good. Yeah, exactly. Well, the council were good. They were supportive, and we had to sort of do a big kind of event plan and put that in front of the safety advisory group, and they approved it. And I think we got access to experts. David Spiegelhalter. I don't know if you know him. He's a professor of the understanding of risk. He's on the radio quite a lot. He's one of our speakers, and so he was able to give us a lot of information that really helped us put the risk into perspective. And I think by that point, it was quite clear that if you were outdoors, the risks were hugely reduced. So
Mm.
we just didn't have any indoor space whatsoever. Um, and people were just so happy to be outside with other people enjoying themselves. So and we didn't have any COVID outbreak. Obviously we had the whole track and trace system in
Mm.
place, and
And
there was
nothing.
there was no comeback from that. So in that respect, it kind of worked. Um,
I would have worried, but then again, this is all pre-vaccine, so you don't even have the concern about the crew being a latent carrier population like you did in
no,
2021.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that wasn't a problem. But I mean, that obviously financially was it, it kind of saved us the fact that we could go ahead, because if we'd had to refund everybody that year, then that probably would have sunk us financially.
So did you
Um,
basically just have all your pre-orders come in?
yes, we gave people the option, so we did a digital festival first, so we did that in May. That was nuts. We basically did this 3-day festival from our front room. And we got people to zoom in. So we did the talks, we had DJs, we had like cookery demonstrations. It was bonkers. But so we gave people the option of either rolling over to 21 or kind of putting their faith in us and sticking with it. So yeah, I think actually the 500 were pretty much the people who said they wanted to do it. That kind of resolved itself quite nicely. And then, but if we'd had to refund all those, I think that would have been the end of it. I don't think we could have carried on. Um, and so then 21 was okay, because we had all that sort of kind of crowd from who'd rolled over, so that sort of worked okay. But I think we, as you well know from talking to other people, I'm sure that you went straight from COVID into cost of living crisis and then
Thank you,
inflation. And
Liz Truss.
yeah, exactly. And I remember last year thinking, oh, well, people are probably just leaving it late. They're just going to buy at the last minute. And, they didn't. That was the new reality, really, is that the ticket sales were hard. And then this year, it's been it's been hard again. Um, but I have to say, and I don't want to jinx this, I'm touching a piece of wood here, that we are seeing ticket sales coming in. It's slow and steady, basically. So I think, well, we're going ahead. We're going to enjoy ourselves, and it will be whatever it is. But I was at Hay Festival last week, and what was really encouraging there is that there were a lot of full tents around the place.
I
So
mean, I was
people,
at the Strawberry Fair, which was full, but that's free,
yeah,
so that doesn't really count.
right. Well, I mean, no, it's good. It shows that there's still an appetite for it, and
Mm,
it is a real problem. It's the double whammy, isn't it, for festival organizers? Their audience, there's still an audience for it, but they've got no money, a lot of them.
mm.
And for the organizers, their costs have gone up, so they've got reduced income, increased costs, and it's just really hard to square that circle. So
And crew are
yeah,
getting out of the business as well, because the
yes,
conditions for people working at festivals is getting worse and worse and worse, mostly. Like,
yeah, interesting.
so
Yeah. Why is
you
that, do you
must.
think?
Um, why do I think crew are leaving?
No, why do you think conditions are getting
Conditions.
worse? Does it?
Honestly, it's as much to do with the rising cost of living as anything else, right?
Mm,
It's not to do with the organizers being worse organizers. It's to do with the budgets being tighter and tighter and tighter,
mm.
and £10 being worth less and less and less. So,
Yeah,
you pay the same person £70 that you were paying £60 last year, you're still paying them less.
yeah, yeah, true, true. And I guess, there's there's less work to go around because
Yeah,
festivals are
there's less
closing.
work. Well, yeah, there's less paid work, so more work is done by volunteers. I've actually got an
Mm.
interview coming up with someone specifically about this, so that should be
Oh,
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll look forward to that. Good stuff.
Yeah. So, how, speaking of your crew, how big is your core team, and what do your key people do? How many of you are there?
Okay, so the core team, i.e., people work on it year round, are me. We've got Helen, who's our programmer for ideas. She's very recently left us for Hay Festival, which is why I was there. last week. So we're just looking for a replacement at the moment for next year.
At the
We've
moment, is
got
that your role now?
the programming is all done really, so
Ah,
that is not an immediate problem, but obviously will
mhm.
become a problem as we gear up for next year. We have got our head of ops, Pauline, who just you know show runs the whole thing basically, a big pile of spreadsheets on her computer. And we've got Eloise, who is our head of marketing, and she does a bit of programming as well. So that's kind of core team year round, keeping the thing ticking over, selling tickets, that kind of thing. And then we've got a kind of satellite crew of delivery, which is our head of build, Tom. We've got our music programmer, Joe, who is obviously involved year round, but isn't involved in the sort of day-to-day organization of the festival. We've got a designer who designs all the structures and decoration for the place. And then our kind of lighting crew, Dave and Judy, does decoration. So we are a very small team in terms of what we deliver for what we deliver, I think. But it sort of has to be that way at the moment because of where we are, in the current climate.
So are there any positions or places for additional artists or performers also this year?
I think we're probably sort of all the program's full now.
That's fair enough.
Yeah,
Adding
yeah.
things on a month in.
We normally try and get our main sort of headliners booked in so that we can launch at the end of January.
Mm.
And then come April, we do a kind of second wave, which will be when we get pretty much everything in place.
Okay.
So yeah,
So if people want to play also, they should contact you before April.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Contact us in December. That's a good time.
All right.
Definitely. That's when we're looking to fill the program.
So as CEO, what do you actually do for the festival?
Well, firstly, CEO is a ridiculous title for what I do.
I
And I
do
think the
wonder
only
why you've chosen it. It is an odd
well,
one. I've never seen it before.
yeah, no, I can tell you why. Because when we were doing sponsorship applications, we were given advice that when you're approaching big companies for sponsorship, it's best if you talk their language. So
Mm.
we were given these sort of kind of very official sounding titles. So CEO means essentially if there is a blocked toilet and it needs unblocking, fundamentally it's going to be me unblocking it because it's a buck stops here title, I suppose. Ultimate responsibility, and I guess that's all it is really. Is that we have had dramas, at various points throughout the festival. We had our high wind warning last year. We've had children go missing and stuff. Thankfully, they've turned up again. But fundamentally, somebody has to be there at the end of the day, responsible when questions are being asked, and that is me. But really, in terms of what I do materially for the festival, my main job is, I guess, organizing a lot of the kind of build stuff, not in terms of the actual putting together of stuff, but just kind of making sure that everything's planned out and coming in at the right point. And I get quite involved in, because I'm a software developer, I do develop the website, and we've got our own system for managing the event, which I've built up over the years. So I do that, get involved in a lot of the design for marketing material. So yeah, lots of different things really, but CEO is not a good description of it.
Chief Everything Officer.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I know people sometimes don't like talking this, but what sort of business structure does the festival operate under? And does anyone ever actually make any money from it?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So, I mean, we are a limited company. We've got our core staff who are paid wages. Short answer to the second question is no. I think probably anybody at the moment will tell you, making a profit out of a festival is, I don't know, it's extremely difficult at the moment. So it's a labor of love without a doubt. So many people give their time for nothing. I don't want it to be that way forever. I think there's a viable business in there somewhere, and in 2019 we were making profit. It was a good business. There's an audience for it. It's just that we're going through a very difficult phase post-COVID at the moment. So we shall see. We shall see what the future brings. I think what is lovely about running this festival is all the people we work with are people we really like. And that is not something you can always say about one's workplace. You know what I mean? It's a real privilege. We have a load of fun doing it. So if it wasn't for that, we would have given up without a doubt. But we enjoy it. We know what we're delivering is fabulous. We know people really enjoy it. So that's what keeps us going, really.
So how many people, you said you've got your core team, do they work full time on it, or do they have other jobs as well?
They've got other jobs as well.
Okay,
so
I thought that makes sense for a 2,000 person festival.
Yeah, for a seasonal, it's quite seasonal, as you can imagine. There are kind of hot spots throughout the year where we're suddenly incredibly busy, and then it'll go quiet for a bit, and then it'll ramp up kind of, well, about now, really.
Yeah. So you mentioned sponsors earlier. Did you manage to ever secure any?
We've had sponsors over the years. We've had drinks brands, we've had universities sponsor us. We've had, what else have we had? I can't think, but yeah, we have. It's always a real struggle.
To find them, or to work with them?
To find them. We found working with them, generally okay. And I think if we had a bigger team, it's difficult because actually kind of managing sponsorship is almost like a full-time job in itself. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince, and you have to take a lot of rejection as well. So it's not something we put a huge amount of time into, but that's not because I don't think it's a good idea. It's just because we don't really have the resource to do that at the moment. But fundamentally, I think it has to be part of any festival these days. I don't think, given the lack of sort of disposable income out there, you can't charge people what it really costs to put on a festival as a ticket price. They won't come at the moment. They haven't got that money. You kind of need sponsorship to make up that shortfall.
I mean, Nodstock is choosing to go on under rather than take on sponsors. Like,
interesting.
I'm sort of interested in that one because you're saying they didn't seem to put much pressure on you.
The sponsors?
Yeah.
No, not really. But I mean, we had quite nice sponsors. I mean, they were like drinks brands. So in terms of working with them, that was quite easy. We just had bars where we were serving their drinks, and that worked really well. I mean, because they were introducing new brands, so we could do workshops, just like whiskey tasting workshops and stuff. So whenever we work with a sponsor, we try and make it not just we're going to stick your logo here and then carry on. We try and actually design some events around whatever it is they're trying to promote in a good way, not
genuinely integrate them into the festival.
Yeah, and the kind of, for want of a better word, brand values, awful term, need to align to make that work. Because I think from an audience's perspective, I think you see a lot of the big music festivals now who have got some, I'm not going to mention any names, but have got some sponsors that make you just think, oh, that's a curious curious combination you've got
Well, I
going on
mean, a
there.
lot
And I
of the
think,
artists are dropping out of a lot of festivals at the moment.
yes, yeah,
Again, not naming names.
yeah. And again, I mean, that I have ambivalent feelings about that as well, because fundamentally the state of the industry is in such a terrible state that it's hard for people to get these to get the show on the road without extra money, and that money's got to come from somewhere. It's not clearly going to come from government. It's people haven't got the disposable income to come from increased ticket prices, so they've got to find it somewhere. And if you're
I
faced with a
mean,
choice of,
so the recent suggestion in the music industry white paper was to essentially charge the arenas. So put a
okay,
levy on the arenas to fund the
well,
grassroots
that's
industry.
interesting. That's interesting.
I think the current figure is extremely low. It's like £1 on 100 or something, which
Right. Okay.
won't do anything
Yeah.
to stop the bleeding. But
Yeah.
still, it's a start and it's an idea.
It's an idea. Yeah. I hear Ticketmaster's name mentioned in the news a bit at the moment. I think that's another one that's doing very well out of the live events business at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is
Ticketmaster, Live
difficult.
Nation, something like half the festivals in the UK more are Live Nation events. It's a
Yeah.
bit scary, to be honest.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So do you
Can
have
we
any?
sorry, can we just go back to Nostock a second? So you've
Yeah.
heard that they chose to not get sponsorship and rather go under. Was there a sort of political
Well,
decision behind that, or
they're not going under. They're not going under. They're going
sorry,
to
they're
yeah,
deciding to?
they're deciding to close. They're deciding to stop proceeding their rent. So that's yeah, like they're still a solvent company. Like they're
Sure,
still
sorry. Yes.
operational. But yeah. So but yeah, they felt. I think they don't want. I think they're worried that they can't find a sponsor who will give them sufficient money to put the festival on without sufficiently damaging the experience. So
Yeah.
something like specifically what Ella said was she didn't want Nostock sponsored by Carling or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yes, it is a
because
tricky
it wouldn't be
one. When I
Nostock anymore. That's her
No.
words.
Yeah. And the sponsors we've had have been, fairly low scale. We've done specific events around their offerings, not kind of title sponsorship. Okay, yeah, I get that.
No,
Yeah.
but with Nostock they've got quite a broad like youth appeal anyway, with lots of like, traditionally dance music sort of crowd. So they can be going for more traditional mass appeal sponsors, probably
Yeah.
more corporate
Yeah.
stuff. And they
Yeah.
could probably get away with it too. And like
Yes.
it's really good of her not to, I think.
I do think there needs to be a bit of a public discussion about this, about the reality of it, really, which is, I don't know if you were aware of the Bailey Gifford issue around Hay and Edinburgh festivals.
I don't think so. What was
No.
I
Okay, so it was in the news recently. So with both festivals, there's a company, because Bailey Gifford are an investment company and they've got some investment in fossil fuels. They also sponsor a lot of literary events, including
yeah.
a festival, or did, Edinburgh, Cheltenham, I think. I'm not sure. And there's an organisation called Fossil Free Books who have put pressure on speakers at these festivals to withdraw from appearing because of their title sponsor. And in the case of Hay Festival, they ended up declining sponsorship, and just so that they could get their performers back effectively. So they've lost what, I don't know how much they were sponsoring them, but they've lost whatever that was, which
Running at even more of a loss now.
exactly, and that was the week before they went ahead. And I do think there needs to be a bit of a public discussion about sponsorship of events like this for the reasons we've talked about. It's very difficult for a festival to go ahead without sponsorship in this environment, and there aren't that many sponsors out there. So do you take the view of, okay, is it better to have, because Bailey Gifford are going to go on doing whatever they do, whether they sponsor a festival or not.
Mm.
You know, it's a tricky one. Is it better to have no festival and have festivals that are not tainted by what you might call dirty money, or I don't know. I
I
don't know.
mean, I spend quite a lot of time in the punk scene, in very DIY environments, and
Yeah.
it can be done. It can be done. It's really really hard. People are worked honestly unfairly, but it you can do it. You can do something without sponsorship. Whether you can make a profit is a completely different thing. But
Yeah.
like
And at the end of the day,
events
sorry, go
like
on.
Equinox proceed and do happen without corporate sponsorship, any corporate
Yeah.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
But
I would say that we have really, I mean, we've had sponsorship, but we're on a very low scale,
yeah,
and we're going ahead this year without sponsorship. It can be done. It's just you're doing it work to the bone. You're cut to the bone. You're not paying people really what they should be paid because the money isn't really there. I don't know, it's hard. It's hard. Anyway, that's not my opinion is sort of immaterial in this, but I do think it's something that needs a little bit more public discussion other than, Bailey Gifford evil, therefore, they mustn't sponsor these events, because there's a balance. For instance, Hay does a lot of work for literacy, I think, across the globe. Um, I don't know if that is lost, is that worth it? I don't know.
yeah,
As I said,
you would have the people argue that the harm done by these companies is so much worse than the good a festival could ever do. But I don't know if that is strictly true, especially because the sponsorship, theoretically, right? Yeah, sure, you're acting as a bit of a smokescreen for their dodgy activities, but also you are taking capital from them, reducing their ability to do harm. And as Lenin once said, I vote to take guns and potatoes from the capitalist pig dogs.
yeah, well, exactly. Why not? Okay, there you are. But there's nuance there, isn't there? It's not a black and white thing, and not all investment firms are the same.
No.
Um,
Um, back to Also Festival. What other festivals in the UK, could you compare it to anything else, or is it very much standing on its own?
I think it is standing on its own. I think there are comparisons to other festivals. Like, did you ever go to Blue Dot up in?
I really
You know
wanted
of it?
to many years. I saw the
Yeah.
adverts in my local chippy when I was a student in Manchester.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
the 2021 lineup with Bjork, or the 2020 lineup, that's the one that I really wanted to go to, and it just got cancelled and all just
Right.
vanished.
Oh,
I was very
yeah.
sad about that.
I think that was a similar had similar aspirations in terms of trying to combine ideas and music, perhaps switched around on focus a little bit from what we're doing.
Mm,
Then obviously you've got the literary festivals like Hay, How the Light Gets In with philosophy festivals. We're obviously a lot smaller than Hay. But I think that those, in terms of ambition, those are festivals we try and emulate. And I think Latitude, in the days when Tanya Harrison was running a lot of the non-music content, she put on some amazing stuff there. I think
mm,
she was a real inspiration for us, because we used to work with her a lot at Latitude for what could be
mm.
done just from a non-traditional music perspective.
And so And more about you. What was the first festival you attended, and how did you get into festivals?
God. I think it was probably Reading. I think. Yeah.
Oh
I
God.
think I went to Reading in Christ. That would have been like 1989 or something. Uh, I remember drinking half a bottle of rum, dancing to the Pogues, and then being sick in a tent. And yeah, it was not a pleasant experience for
That
me or
sounds
anyone else.
like a perfect Reading. What are you on about?
I think it's a pretty standard Reading experience, to be honest. But
At least you remember
yes.
the Pogues. I don't remember Metallica at all.
It's like a rite of passage, Reading, isn't it? It's sort
Mm,
of a thing you just, it's great. I loved it. I
yeah.
think I went to Glastonbury maybe a year after. So I went to Glastonbury a few years. I don't know, just really, I don't know. There's something magic about a British festival, I think. It's
Mm,
that, I mean, I've been to a few European festivals as well. I don't know. There's maybe just not the jeopardy that the weather's going to turn on you or what. I don't know. It's just not the same feeling. And as I said earlier, I think the British countryside, when the weather's good, you just can't beat it. And being out
mm,
there with a whole bunch of people, it's the craziness, it's the randomness. You don't know quite what to expect. Something's going to happen. It may be good, maybe bad, but it'll be interesting no matter what. I really like that, and I like the way that it harks back to centuries of fairs and festivals and stuff that we've been is kind of ingrained in our culture. Really, it's
mm,
just
mm.
in some ways, in some instances, on a scale much bigger than could ever have been imagined. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
No,
great
I
thing.
was just at the 50th Strawberry Fair.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, with my aunt who went to the first
oh no, that's
back in
amazing.
1974.
Wow. Okay. I
Yeah.
think I went there in must have been mid-90s, I think. Yeah, that was good fun.
Oh, you'd have probably bumped into my dad, maybe
Uh,
carrying around me, very, very small.
okay. I just remember a double-decker bus that just the sides that lifted up and just bass bins and speakers across the whole side of it. It's
That's
quite something.
amazing. Oh, I really want
I've
to build
always I've
something like
always
that.
kind of loved sound systems actually, and some of our systems we've got also as things I built myself. I don't know. It's
Oh,
like a
that's
sort of
so
little
cool.
little hobby of mine to make these things.
I need to put you in
Um,
contact with a friend of mine. He's working on a sound system that's essentially radial. What's it called? Can we look it up? Awasa.
yeah.
Awasa sound. Yeah. So it's using basically a driver underneath a spherical thing made up of, I believe it's aluminium strips to just
Okay.
project it equally in all directions, and then an inverted horn shape carved,
Mm.
like there's a central piece. It was turned out of like wood plywood to be stuck
Yeah.
together at like 11:30, and it's just this crazy horn with a like driver in the top that it's around a central point, so it's three-dimensional, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
you get the treble around in all directions. It's a very cool system. You should chat
That
to
sounds
him.
great. Yeah, okay. That sounds
I
brilliant.
think that it might be something that also could do with.
Yeah. It reminds me of one year we did the bunker, and we've so the walls of the bunker go together very easily. As I said, it's a farm with these big 8 foot straw bales.
Yeah,
We then
stab
put
them
a
together
roof.
with steel spikes.
Yeah. And then we have experimented with a number of different roofs. One year we had all this corrugated iron, so we've just put a corrugated iron roof on top, which was great. Bear in mind, this is supposed to be our quiet late night venue, so that we don't annoy the neighbours. But there's a certain frequency, bass frequency.
Oh,
There's like the resonant frequency of all this corrugated iron on the roof. And it was just basically massive kind of reflector thing that just emanator that just produces phenomenal noise at a certain frequency.
did you just have to put more straw on top to deaden it or something?
I think I just went in and turned the bass down. I think it was
Oh.
it was too late for anything like that.
Nope, nope, can't do it this year. Got to try again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So designing speakers, many of the systems are yours. Are there any particular centerpieces that you've done over the years?
What, in terms of speakers?
Yeah, yeah.
No, not really. I mean, it's probably overselling it. I'm generally design them. I just build them to plans I find on the internet. Um, so yeah, but we've got the sound system for our bunker has sort of grown over the years. That's quite good fun.
Homemade sound systems are always brilliant. So much better
Yeah,
than just going to the shop and buying a PA. Like,
I think there's an aesthetic there, and I think that really. So we live in London. Obviously, where we are is sort of on the carnival route. So
mm,
every year our street gets closed off for carnival, and I just love the aesthetic of those homemade sound systems. They just look great, and yeah. So I think basically it's fundamentally is a kind of a subconscious desire to recreate that aesthetic is what drives me.
yeah, you need to talk to my mate with this
Okay, yeah,
omnidirectional
sounds
sound.
good. Sounds really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's exactly up your street. You'll love it.
yeah.
So, what would your dream lineup be? Not for also, just for a festival you could attend and truly soak in. You don't have a radio, you don't have to do anything. You're there with whoever you want to be. You've got a camper van, so you're comfortable, you can go and have a rest. It's
Okay.
lovely.
I just I think I just always want to see new stuff. So and be surprised. So in terms of a dream lineup, I think I was at we went to Stand and Calling a few years ago, and I got young kids, and Public Enemy were playing, who I'd been wanting to see for years, never seen them. And I was on my own with the kids, and they were just like got to that point, like little kids, is like cease to operate, they can't tantrums, meltdowns. It's like this isn't just. I'm going to have to put them to bed.
Mm,
So I listened to Public Enemy from, a mile away in a tent with
mm,
two kids. And to be fair to them, they now feel very guilty about that, which is a bit unfair, really, because it's not really their fault. But I milk it for all it's worth. So, but in terms of like bands, I'd like to see. No, I don't know. I really like. I love going when I go to other festivals. I love going to the smaller stages, and I love seeing stuff that I'm probably not going to see and you come across otherwise, and just being really pleasantly surprised. We had a band Le Boom, who are like Northern
mm.
Irish sort of. Have you heard of them?
I think I've seen them late night somewhere.
Yeah,
Like it's one of those
they're
ones.
nuts.
Yeah.
And first saw them in Latitude in some tiny stage in the woods somewhere, and we got them along to also. It's that sort of thing I really like, and so that's what I want to do with also. I love also to be a place where you just discover new stuff. Um, yeah. Sorry, that
So
didn't answer your question very
no,
well,
no,
but
not really. If you do you have like a if you don't, that's fine because no one's really aggressively answered the question properly yet. Like everyone always circles around. Like a lot of people go, "Oh no, my lineup is perfect. I would like to keep it exactly as it is and maybe add one massive band." Talking to you, Kev.
yeah. But it's interesting what works in a festival environment and what doesn't. I think I saw Kraftwerk play a festival, and they just didn't work in that environment. They're just not a band for
Hmm.
outdoors, which was interesting. Yeah, uh, yeah. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not going to answer that any better than I've done. I'm afraid. Sorry, Tim.
That's okay. That's all right. So, would it be fair to describe also as a boutique festival?
Well, I think it does get described as that, and it's like a marketing shorthand, isn't it? I suppose
Mm.
for what does that mean? It means a small festival with relatively high production values, I suppose. And in that sense, I think we definitely tick that box, um, because yeah, that's what we do. I think what I don't like about that term is it implies a sort of exclusiveness, which I really is not part of what also is. I think also should be really accessible to people who are interested. We've got multiple ways in to coming to also, from volunteering to like our volunteer tickets, which are 60 quid tickets, which allow you just to do a single shift and come for the whole weekend.
That's really clever. I haven't seen
Yeah,
anyone do that before.
it's a really nice solution because, obviously not a lot of people haven't got cash at the moment, and it really
Yeah.
helps us out. So it's a nice sort of halfway point.
No, there are a
Um,
bunch of festivals I would have done that deal for.
yeah, yeah. And compared to a lot of other festivals, I think our prices are pretty reasonable.
Mm.
So, but I think boutique does give you that impression of like, oh God, is it going to be just all, you know,
Yummy mummies.
yummy smashed avocado everywhere and
Yeah.
100 quid dinners, which we're not about at all. But in terms of high production values and small festival, yeah, we definitely tick that
Yeah.
box.
But the clientele isn't just the editorial section of The Guardian.
No, probably a fair few Guardian readers there, but no,
Yeah.
not staff.
No, that's fair enough. Finally, all right. So, is there anyone also, or any friends of the festival, or anyone associated who have really done a shift helping the event out? Who
Yeah,
you really want to shout
loads.
out on the
Yeah, I think I've alluded to
Pop
this,
Out
but I mean,
podcast?
in terms of shout out, I mean, the landowners, uh, Lizzie and Richard Kerris, they'd get a shout out.
Hmm.
The farmer, Rosie Manton, who kindly moves her sheep around to give us the land. We've got a phenomenal build team. So, but in particular, I think Tom, our head of build, his mum Sue, who basically runs the catering kitchen for the whole build week, which is just unbelievable. His cousins, Rob and Tim, and his mate Paul, absolutely superb input we get from them. And it's what's quite nice about doing this is we have kind of like involved our families. So
Mm.
yeah, I know Pauline's parents, Pauline's our head of ops, her parents come along and they do all sorts. They ran glamping for 1 year, and Helen's parents come and help out. And it's quite nice having that multi-generational thing because I think when you get older, the time spent with your parents, obviously, at my age where your parents are getting, quite elderly, you don't often get time to get to spend time doing things with them that aren't just like hanging around, eating food or chatting, to do something meaningful and constructive. And actually, from my point of view, I've got a generation below as well. My son now is running the bars across the festival.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that is really nice to have
Mm.
that the ability to do that. Um, God, there are going to be loads of names I've missed off this, but that's a good
Oh,
start. Yeah.
no. There was a story, so a warning against getting too big. And there was a story, Silas, the organizer of Maui Wowie Festival in Norfolk now, was telling me a few weeks ago, about how he just completely failed to recognize a member of his volunteer team who had been with him for 10 years. And it just
Wow.
completely blanked her.
Yeah.
And it was like
Yeah.
he was just so embarrassed, and it's just the
Yeah.
opposite of what he's trying to do. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It is
And
hard
it
though, because when you're in festival, it's just a sea of faces and it's
yeah, and when you're running what a crew, like, for also you must have a crew of several hundred people, right?
yes.
Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even it must be very easy to lose a few in that.
Yeah. It would be embarrassing somebody that's been back year on year. That is
Yeah.
true.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. No. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you onto the podcast. Thank you so much for telling us about Also. It sounds so exciting. Can you give us a reminder of when your dates are and what your ticket prices are and where to buy
Okay.
tickets?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Tim. It's been a real pleasure for me too. Really nice to chat to you.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yes, we are the 12th to the 14th of July. It is www.also-festival.com. Tickets start from 60. Actually, we've got a price rise, which will have just happened by the time you're listening to this. So our volunteer tickets are 65 now. Our adult weekends are 165. And we do family tickets and single parent tickets. There's a lot of flexibility there. Yeah, was that it? Was I supposed to cover anything
I
else?
think that's everything. I think we're good. Hi, this is Tim. If you want to sponsor the UK Festival podcast, contact me and give me some money.